We do not have a quorum.
Sorry, people. Sorry.
We do not have a
Wow.
quorum right now. We're looking for, I think one more. So it isn't really a proper meeting at this point. Did the committee wish to continue on with a discussion? There will be no decisions at this point. But we know that we have another couple trying to sign in, correct?
Right.
Did you want to take another 5 minutes, or did you want to sort of start the meeting out as a non-meeting, which is not usually the proper process?
All right, well, let's stand by then and see if we can get Ron to get logged in. Okay, we'll take a hiatus. Everybody just talk about the weather, be truly Canadian.
Is anybody touching base with Eleanor? Because I can email her.
I sent an email to Eleanor. Yeah.
Okay. So we're missing Eleanor, Kurt, Carrie. We know she's not coming. And Phyllis.
I sent one to Phyllis as well. Oh,
So
and it's
Ron
just
Ron
joined.
and Mylene.
Yeah, Ron just emailed me to say that they're having troubles.
So
Can
Christy?
I make a suggestion? I don't know if it'd be at all. What do you think if, Alan, if you stopped the meeting and then went back on, or would we lose everybody?
I think if I stopped it, we'd lose everybody. I could, unless I made someone else a host here, then I could stop it. But you're thinking that my leaving the meeting would help it?
No, not like that. No, I was just thinking, sometimes you open a meeting and it's buggy, like it's just buggy, right? Where you try to get into a meeting and it's buggy, so you leave and you start again.
Well, we could cancel this and then start right over again on the same thing, or I could send out a new link to everybody. I could start a new meeting. No, but that wouldn't help. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I want to stop for a sec. They're using the smart board in OK Falls.
Oh, okay.
Ron and Jim, I don't know that they may have used it once or twice before, but I think that's probably at least as big a factor. So I'd like to give them the chance to sign in before we start moving things around again.
Yeah.
When you count quorum, are you counting Mylene?
Yes.
Okay.
Not twice though. It's just once.
That's a bugger. That's not fair. Okay. All right. So let's just all breathe for 5 minutes. I'm going to try to contact Mylene because she's having trouble getting heard, and contact Ron.
Sounds good. We'll just take a pill.
Hey, Mylene, it's Matt Taylor. Give me a call. 403-607-1080.
Kurt's in now.
Now we go to Ron. Hi. Okay.
joint. Vancouver could get 3 to 5 percent. As for an economic benefit,
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we sure can.
Perfect, thank you.
We have quorum now. I understand we're just waiting for the director.
Looks like Matt's got him on the phone.
Okay, good. So we've got a meeting going and we're just going to link you in. Yeah, I think we're good there. So let's go. We are, just let me get my agenda back again. Okay. Situation normal, all blank. We'll call the meeting to order. I've already gone through the housekeeping issues. Christie's verified that we have quorum. For those that aren't able to see, we have Ellen, Sherry, myself and Christy, David Forst, Kay Medland, Bob Daly, Mylene Malik, Phyllis and Ron by phone, as well Jim Zaffino by phone. And then we have a guest, we've got Kurt Hebert. And we have a guest, Judy Garner, public member, Judy Garner. Okay, so I think that's everybody. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. I've got made by Kay, seconded by Bob Daly. Okay. Any comments or questions, further suggestions? Seeing, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Not hearing any, that motion's carried. Okay. Meeting minutes, December 8th. I saw that those were supposed to be circulated on Monday. True confessions, I have not seen them. Have they been circulated? Yep. Bob's nodding. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as circulated. Again, made by Kay, seconded by. Okay, I've got David Forst. Thank you. Any comments, errors and omissions? Not hearing any. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of receiving the minutes as circulated, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I've got Kurt as well and Mylene. Okay, that motion's carried as well. All right, now, today's meeting is to review a couple more information sheets. And then to kind of allow the consultants to walk us through how we're shifting gears here from preparation and review of information sheets to public engagement. Okay, our public engagement meetings start on the 16th. 5 of them, 16, 17, 23, 24, and 26. We've got posters that are up and available, and we'll discuss those later. But, you know, we're really changing gears. And you know, I don't know that we're going to get tons and tons of people showing up to these open houses. I'm hoping we get some. And, you know, the purpose of tonight is to, like I said, review those information sheets and then start talking about how we're going to be talking with people about how we're going to define this line that sets out where the boundary for Okanagan Falls municipality or municipal district might be. So that said, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry and Alan. Fly at it.
All right,
And
thank you.
I'll take questions when you sort of pass the mic back to me for questions.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And good evening, everybody. Thank you. And that's you set the stage nicely, Mr. Chair, for the evening. And as you noted, we have three things we're really talking about. We'll start with an information sheet. We'll get onto the open house materials, and then we'll end with remaining schedule going forward. With respect to the information sheet, let me just put on a few slides if I could. I'll just share screen here with folks. We'll start the presentation, as it were. So we do have one information sheet. The committee will remember that at our previous meeting in January, we had some discussion around the idea of what a municipality, were one to be formed, what would it be called, how would it be classified, what would be the size of its council, and those kinds of questions. So we had put together a similar sheet for the actual incorporation process, in which or that we have been advising on a little bit north of here in the Shuswap. And as the chair mentioned earlier, we're not quite in this process with Area D. We're not quite at the stage yet of an incorporation study. That just letting somebody in here. There we go. That said, we did have some discussion as a committee last time. And so these questions do kind of typically come up as one approaches the possibility of an incorporation study, and then during an incorporation study as well.
Excuse me, ma'am, we're going to hang up the phone now, okay?
Okay, try that again. So anyway, on that note, then we have put together a fact sheet or an information sheet for this committee, simply to capture some of the information we talked about last time. The key points on the information sheet are as follows. First of all, we talk about the differences amongst kind of our villages, towns, and districts, and cities as well. So we've got our four basic classifications of municipalities that would be applied as a matter of course under the Local Government Act. And so we see that under Section 10(1) of the Local Government Act, there are we start off with three different classifications. We noted this last time as well, that are really population based. And so if the jurisdiction or if the area that is being incorporated is fewer than 2,500 residents, then it becomes a village. If it's between 2,500 and 5,000, it's a town. And if it's above 5,000, it's a city. The exception to all of that, let me just let someone in there. The exception to all of that is when we have the characteristics of a rural area, of a more rural area or less dense area, or an area that's large enough that has it's a particular size, over 800 hectares in size, and has also a population that is of a particular density, that is kind of a lower density. And so when we look at those conditions, we call automatically under the legislation, the area would become a district. And so if a portion of Area D were to incorporate, we would anticipate that it would probably fall under district municipality status. So it would be the district of whatever the name would be. All of this is important because when we look at the type of municipality and the council size, the legislation also sets out the connection between those two factors. So villages and towns have by default a council size of 5. That is 1 mayor and 4 councillors. Cities and districts have a council size that by default is 7, so a council, a mayor and 6 councilors. Now, all of that can change post incorporation simply by way of a bylaw that the municipal council can pass, but that's kind of the default starting point. So if it were a district municipality, it would have a starting council at least size of 7, 1 mayor and 6 members of council. All of this is important because well, I should mention that there are very few differences in the type of, or kind of legislative or statutory authority differences between the different types of, or among the different types of classifications. In fact, the only difference really as it relates to the district municipality are some additional powers that concern drainage. But for all intents and purposes, a village is a town, is a city, is a district from a authority perspective. And I'm simplifying that a bit, but that's kind of the gist. But the province does receive input as you go through an incorporation phase of the study to determine whether or not there are any reasons why the incorporated part of the area that is being looked at should deviate from the default in the legislation. So this issue, to pick up on the chair's sentiment of earlier, would be something that a committee would look at as part of the incorporation study. But we noted it last time in our meeting, so we wanted to get it in front of folks as well, just to answer any questions. And Mr. Chair, we're happy to answer questions that may arise at this point.
Okay, we'll have a break. Any questions, comments? Difficult for me to see. Okay, Bob, I see you there. Yep.
Yeah, Alan, just in looking at the first page, there's a great big however. So regarding of all the default points, it says if the lieutenant governor considers it to be in the public interest to do so, a municipality may be incorporated in another classification. So it sounds like no matter what the rules are, if the public is able to convince the lieutenant governor that we don't want to be the district municipality of OK Falls, we'd rather be the village of OK Falls. That's the way it could go.
It could, yeah. And again, you've captured on a good place there, Bob, because if you're quite right, the ministry will typically reach out to the committee or to the new council and ask if there are, actually to the incorporation committee of the day, and ask if there are reasons why the municipality to be should not kind of follow the default. And if those, you've kind of captured a good example, if the group feels that it should have a smaller council or a larger council for whatever reason, and the reasons are articulated well enough that the cabinet on the advice of municipal affairs is comfortable with that, then they can always change that. And it also is the point too, as I mentioned, that it's more difficult to kind of change the classification of village, town, city, or district post incorporation, but it's quite easy to change the size of council. And we saw that just recently, actually, with the town of View Royal in Greater Victoria, in the Capital Regional District, which council just passed a bylaw to change its size of council from 5 to 7. So that can be done by bylaw, but the actual village, town, city, district, that one's a little bit harder to change. It has to be changed by cabinet. And so as we approach kind of incorporation, then if that's the way the community goes, the cabinet would, or the ministry would reach out to determine whether there were any concerns, and should those concerns be communicated to cabinet to determine if there should be kind of a different approach than what's in the legislation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Thanks, Bob. Any other comments? And actually, I'll just defer quickly to our provincial representative here, David Van Omen. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, Alan hit the nail on the head. It was the same example I was talking about before, in terms of if the recommended boundary happens to be under 2,500, but village is not satisfactory to folks, then we can definitely have a conversation about a different classification.
Okay, thanks, David.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments before we move on? This is a useful information sheet. I think it gets at some of the questions people are going to be asking. No. Okay.
I did notice just now one, where did I see that now? Well, I'll let Sherry know later. There's just one spelling error, it seems like.
You bet.
Yeah.
Go back to her by email.
Yeah,
Offline.
it's in the introduction. That's
Okay.
all. Thank you.
All right, back to you, Sherry and Alan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to pass it over to Sherry now, who's going to start us off here with the open house materials, and then I'll kind of jump in on a few points as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to try walking you through sort of the format of our open houses, the agenda, the things we'll be addressing, and also go through sort of some of the things that we'll be talking about during the presentation, so that hopefully we can get the committee comfortable with how these events are going to go and sort of the materials that will be presented and just, yeah, everything, the details about the open houses. So just we're going to start out, we're going to have registration, and Christy can jump in anytime if I've misrepresented what RDOS is going to be doing, but my understanding is to attend in person, we have registration for that, so we can at least keep track of how many people are coming in person. The link for those who are attending online will be provided on the RDOS website. Those attending in person, my understanding is they will need to provide proof of vaccine when they're coming in. So we will, and we can talk about roles in a little bit, but so we'll be doing the check as they come in. We're going to have a sign-in sheet where people sign in. They can also leave their either phone number or email if they care to be signed up to get more information. They will get a copy of what we're calling the boards or the handouts that as they come in, as well as a feedback form. At the meetings, we're going to have a map of all of Area D, so sort of large format printed out on an easel. We will also have a printed out map of the smaller area that's the focus of that particular meeting. And people coming in will be invited to put a sticker or a pin, depending on what we decide to use there, on the map from where they're from. So they don't have to if they're not comfortable sort of identifying the area that they're from, but if they do, they can put that on the map, and then we'll just have the chairs spaced out. Once everyone's assembled, we've got everybody in, we'll be making some, Matt will be making some welcome and introductory remarks, and then we're going to pass it over to Alan and I, and we will take everyone through, first of all, sort of an overview of what they can expect from the meeting, how we're going to be going through it, both for those who are there in person, as well as those online, just so everybody understands, you know, the people in person will have already picked up their handouts and that kind of thing, but making sure that the people who are also online know where they can get those things. The presentation, yeah, let's touch on the committee roles maybe next. So the roles that we have for the committee, I'm not sure yet who is planning on attending in person versus online, and I know that that might change based on the meeting, but I'm not sure, Christy, maybe you can clarify. Do we want the committee to be helping us with the vaccine checks, or is that something that RDOS needs to be doing or prefers to be doing?
If we have to do vaccine checks, we'll be there to do that.
Okay.
We may not have to, so we're just sort of waiting for a final ruling as to whether this is considered a business meeting under the provincial health standard. So either way, don't worry about that part of it. We'll look after that. Okay,
awesome. So then that won't be one of the committee roles, so that's good. We were hoping that we can get a volunteer for each of the meetings to sit at the sign-in table. So just to be sitting there with a sign-in sheet, and depending on how many committee members we have at that particular meeting, preferably we would also have somebody sitting at a table with the handouts, just to make sure that everyone gets a copy of the handouts as well as the feedback form. And then one other committee member standing at the map and just sort of handing out a sticker or a pin and explaining what the map is for. So that would be 3 different committee members, but if 2 also works, because we can do sign in and pick up handouts at the same table. But yeah, we have those roles. That would be great if a committee member takes those on depending on who's there at each evening. During the meeting, we will be asking, we sort of have sections of the presentation, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but after each section, we will be pausing and doing a bit of a Q&A for that section. And during that time, we will also be using an online poll for those who are attending online. So those online would get one of the questions that we are posing. We would do online, they would answer on their poll, we would see the results right away. And we'll ask the same questions of the people who are there in person as well. But then it'll be just, obviously, if those are hand up kind of questions, as opposed to, because they're not providing any information on their computer. So if one of the committee members during the meeting can jot down, when we do have those show of hands kind of questions, just rough idea of how many people are with their hands up, and just recording that information, that would be helpful as well. So those are some of the roles that we were hoping that the committee could fulfill. Again, doesn't have to be decided in advance, other than making sure we have at least 2 that are there, so we can have someone at the sign-in table and at the map. And then Matt, if you're not going to be there, we do have you as providing introductory remarks, as well as doing some moderating of the in-person questions during the Q&A sessions. So if you're not going to be there in person, then maybe we'll switch that role up and have someone else doing that. So it'd be good to know that in advance.
So I can tell you now that I've planned to be at all the meetings.
Okay.
But you know, the committee has a vice chair as well.
Yeah.
And Bob is more than capable of standing in and has got more experience than I do at this kind of stuff. So we're in good hands at that regard, I think.
That's great. And yeah, and even if, you know, if someone's not well or has it, whatever other reasons why they can't be making it, we can, I'm sure we can shift things around. So none of them are crucial, and I'm sure everyone will be able to cover for each other if need be. So last minute is okay too, but any questions? I'll pass it back to you, Matt, and then I'll take you through sort of some of the information that we'll share during the presentation, but that's sort of how we see the event rolling out. I mean, we're trying to sort of simulate all the things that we would normally get through through an in-person open house, except for, you know, we have to provide the boards as handouts instead of giving people that sort of time to go through the boards and have some informal conversations. So that's really the piece that we're missing. So we've provided kind of a beefed up feedback form to try and see if we can tease out some of that information that we would normally get from some of those conversations. And we've also tried to add in sort of some of the polling and try and keep the people who are online engaged a little bit more, maybe. But other than that, yeah, so it's maybe a little bit longer of a presentation than we would normally have. But like I said, we're just trying to replicate the same sort of, being able to get to the same sort of information and provide people with the same sort of opportunities to learn the information that they would during an open house.
Right. Question from Bob.
Yeah, just on the issue of committee members and helping, Matt, I'm wondering if it would be wise if we could, you know, poll our committee members and to have a schedule ahead of time instead of just hoping that people are going to show up. You know, for us to commit to, you know, 2 or 3 meetings as a minimum, I don't think is asking too much. I know some of us will be there for every single one of them, but I think that, yeah, I think it's realistic, and maybe tomorrow is something we could work on a schedule, but just to ensure that we've got a good representation from the committee too.
Okay, good, and I agree, and I think you can anticipate, committee, that you'll be asked to sort of sign up for which meetings, and I don't know that we're going to assign you to the meet and greet table or the handout table or the map, but I think if we can just get 2 people guaranteed and maybe a spare for every meeting, then we'd feel more comfortable. Maybe there'll be 4 people at the meeting altogether.
Yeah, and we can, if you want to do that in the meeting, that's great. And if not, if people want to sign up afterwards and sort of, and we
We'll
can
do that offline.
Okay.
We'll do that. It'll
Perfect.
take forever to do it tonight. We'll still be here tomorrow. I've got a question from Mylene asking if the handouts or boards can be emailed to those who are online. So how do you explain that? How do you get that to people that are signing in?
Yeah, we could, we were going to have the handouts posted on the website for them to download, but we can also have them emailed. I can ask.
You could do that if you put a registration page.
Yeah, I was going to say if
into
we know in advance who's signing in, but we do want to allow for that opportunity that someone last minute. Like I don't think we were going to have an online requirement to register, just to allow people to sort of last minute decide that.
So what would happen if you put the
logging in.
registration requirement in and then lifted it that afternoon or something like that?
We could do that. Yep, the registration is being coordinated through RDOS, and it's being done through WebEx and not being hosted through WebEx as an RDOS event, not through Zoom.
Okay.
So
got it. All right. Well, that's we'll leave that.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Christy,
I mean,
guess.
that would be yeah, ideal, because once if we know who's attending, then we can sort of send out specific instructions, and here's where you find all the boards that you'll need, and they will be referred to during the meeting, those kind of details. But we can also provide that information on the website. But
let's post it on the website, and we can make note of that at the start of the meeting as well, that those resources that we're going to be referring to in the meeting are posted online. And I didn't come up with that brilliant idea, Mylene did. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Can't always see everybody.
I can see that.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, it sounded like that we were now going to have a registration deadline for people who are online. And so if they couldn't, if they don't decide to attend until the last minute, then they wouldn't have access to it. And I'm wondering if that's closing a few doors, if in fact I understood that correctly.
I guess what I was trying to suggest was ask people to register, but just put that information out as, and if you log in beforehand, you're going to get asked to provide your information. But if you just log in that afternoon and find out about it that afternoon, that request wouldn't be there. I didn't explain that very well.
So there'd be no like you wouldn't be required to register. If you do register, you'd get sort of some extra information, but all the information will be provided online. And at the beginning of the meeting, we will be explaining, if you're, if you're attending online or if you're attending by phone, here's how you can get the information. This we do have handouts here. Here's where they're available if you want to, take a minute and go grab them or show them, get them up on your computer. This is where you'll find them. They're also, not, we will refer to them in the presentation, but you could go afterwards to sort of take a look at them then as well. So.
Okay, that good point, Kate. I think we've addressed it. Okay, any other comments or questions from anybody? No. Moving on, back to you, Alan and Sherry.
Okay. I will just go through generally what we will be covering in our presentation. So the presentation will have sort of 4 main sections. We're going to start with just a background, talk about the purpose of the study. So a lot of this will be very familiar to all of you, of course, because it's just kind of providing the information that we've just spent the last, whatever it is now, 6 months going through. So a lot of the information that we've collected. So the background, the study purpose, the study committee, the incorporation study process, like where we are in that process. And I've shown every time I have an asterisk here on this slide, that's where we refer to one of the handouts. So the incorporation study process, of course, that was already provided in our overview, but we've provided it as a handout as well. And then provide some background, some Area D context. So really information about population of Area D, some of the statistics, some of the assessment information, and then some information on the community that we're having the focus on. So, you know, information about the population, the number of houses, just whatever information we can get, some of the services that are provided within that particular community, anything that might be unique to that community. So just highlighting some of the community context for our focus area. And then that sort of segues into our component that's talking about services. So we talk broadly about RDOS services, how the regional district provides region-wide services, sub-regional services, and local services. We make reference to, again, one of our handouts, which shows that service sheet that was included within our overview. Again, the list of all the services that the RDOS provides. We talk about how some of the services are from other providers, the province, maybe improvement districts, that type of thing. And then we talk about our tax bill, which is another one of our handouts. And we go through how those services, the same way we did through our fact sheet. So the tax bill really is a culmination of all the fact sheets that we put together. So every service and what that service would cost if your house was an average house at $450,000. So we go through that sort of tax bill so people understand, you know, who's providing the services, what the services cost. And then at the end of each section, not after the background, but after services, the governance, and then the third, the boundary considerations and incorporation impacts, we pause after we've gone through that section and we pose a few questions. We ask, and we do a bit of a question and answer or Q&A with those in person as well as online who has questions about the services and about the things we just went through. We have a couple questions that we have in our one of our handouts that just reiterates the questions that we go through in our presentation. And we will stop to poll the online community and ask them a yes, no, or a multiple choice question that's that we also pose to our people who are in the audience. Before we go through into governance. Then in governance, we talk about the board composition. We do have a governance handout. We talk about how the board makes decisions and voting, the opportunities for input from residents into decision-making process. Again, a lot of the things that we talked about in our, we had a governance fact sheet. So a lot of the things that are in there, we reiterate in the presentation, and then we will again pause, ask a few questions for regarding governance and take any questions from both the online community as well as those who are there in person, including doing an online poll. And when we do the online polls, we'll get the results right away. So we can sort of report out to those who can't see the poll that, you know, we have this many people online and this is where they were at, because you'll see who has their hand up and who doesn't in person, but we'll also get that information from who's online. And then the last section of the presentation sort of touches on more of the things that we covered in our incorporation insights. So the boundary considerations, the host of things that all the technical inputs that are part of that boundary consideration, and how we combine that with community input, which is what we're seeking now, and how those decisions are made about boundaries. And we also touch on sort of the broader impacts of incorporation and how incorporation would impact services, governance, and finance. And we have a handout that again uses that chart that was in the overview that was sent out, the mail out. And then we have a couple other handouts, but then we will pause, ask some questions about boundary consideration and incorporation impacts, and then open it up to a broader Q&A about anything else that's on people's minds or things that they want to share. So that's kind of the outline of our presentation for the open houses. Back to you, Matt. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, I want to go back. Apparently, Phyllis, you had a question, I think from the previous section, and we'll take that now.
Sure.
Yeah, just a clarification. I was just wondering, so what I understand now is the registration is really important for the in-person meetings regarding COVID. The registration for the online is really to only make sure that people have access to the handouts. Is that right? So really, we don't need to really worry about any kind of registration for online at all. It just kind of muddies the waters, I'm thinking, if I'm correct. Are you saying that the registration for online is just for them to get access to the attachments?
Yeah, we just thought if we, right now, initially, we weren't planning on doing any on registration for people attending online, but if we want to include that, and that's fine if we decide that we want to do that, it would just be sort of an extra avenue to then send them a specific email that says, hey, don't forget, this is where you get, here's your here's all your handouts. But yes, those handouts will still be available online anyway. So there is no burning need to register if you're attending online.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
That said,
My opinion would be it's not necessary.
that said, and I don't want to draw us too far backwards here, but we just had a meeting in December, and we did use the words, please register, and we had over 100 people. So for Okanagan Falls, that's pretty good. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a distraction, and I think we'll be able to. I think we just need to leave Sherry and Christy to, they're aware of the issues, and I think we've raised all the issues, and they'll figure out the best way of trying to work our way through them.
Perfect.
Okay, now we're talking about the agenda. The background, the services, the governance, and the boundary consideration. So if I got any questions here.
Is there any way that we could have some type of graphic that talks about the last check mark, the boundary consideration and incorporation impacts? I think it's really important, and done such an excellent job of the other handouts that we got for this meeting were really exceptional. But I think there's so much meat on the table that would really be good to have a visual, because not everybody's an auditory learner and able to digest it that way. Is there something that we might be able to do with that piece?
I guess the only one that we have I have a really simple boundary considerations sort of equation, which is the technical input, which we sort of go through in sort of a long list, plus community input sort of equals the boundary, and then the decision-making process. But on the impacts of incorporation, we have that one table that shows services, impacts on services, governance, and finance. That one chart that we used in the, you got a copy of it. It's in the handouts there, but that's sort of our incorporation impact handout that we refer to, and it was reproduced in the overview mail out as well, and it talks about sort of what some of the main changes would be. But I'm not sure, if there's something like a topic that's we're not addressing in there that.
Yeah, it's an excellent handout. That incorporation impact one is really good. I'm just thinking that boundary considerations piece where it talks about the technical input.
Right.
I've been sitting at all the meetings and I'm trying to pay attention, and I'm not sure if I could describe what the technical input is to my neighbors.
Right.
I think I have a sense of what you're talking about, I think, and I think I can confer with Sherry, and I think there's something we can put together to graphically show the key factors that one would consider when looking at a boundary. I think we could show that using a few icons. So that's probably possible to put together.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've got another question here from Bob.
Yeah, further to the boundary discussion, one of the, and it was alluded to, I think, at our last meeting, and one of the major visuals that we used were maps. And the map showed each of the communities. It showed their, I have to say, relative it wasn't populations, but it was based on properties with improvements on it, which really essentially said this is where homes were. Those were really good graphics. And in looking at what might be natural boundaries, simply looking at a map with the various communities or neighborhoods, if we want to call them that, I think would have a big impact.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bob. So the maps that we're using that are being prepared for us, that will be at each meeting, as well as available online of each of the focus areas, will be sort of larger versions of the OCP map. So they'll show land uses. But if there's something different that you would like us to show, I also have a map that's in that I've been using in the presentations, just working on the presentation, that shows it shows property class. So we show the neighborhood sort of, so you can see which ones are residential and which ones are farm, which ones are commercial, that kind of thing.
I'm just going to jump in here. It's Matt. I think that would be helpful. I also wonder, Canada Post would have a neat dot thing, you know, like if we had a dot for every address, that would be helpful for me. I mean, everyone else on this call might disagree, but that would be kind of cool for me.
I mean, we can also show in the presentation, we can show like screenshots of like the ortho photo from the area. I mean, those kind of visuals might help as well.
Okay, so I think, you know, we've covered that. We're looking at, you know, different map representations.
Yeah.
Christy, does RDOS have a GIS whiz?
Yeah, we have several.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
who's providing all our maps.
okay, good. And you guys are already talking, enough said.
Yeah.
Good.
And Matt, I can provide you with a link to our online mapping for the general public. You may like that. You may want to navigate through that. In fact, if the rest of the committee is interested, I could send you a link and some quick tips on how to do that. I don't think we can do it live at the meeting though, but I'm always happy to share that with anybody.
Okay. All right. Bob, did I see your hand up again? No. Anybody else? Questions? Not seeing any. Look, I know you've already gone through the sort of agenda but there are some, in my mind, phenomenal handouts. And I'm just wondering, did you plan on walking through those?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's you're jumping ahead.
all right. Okay.
And that's a
Yes.
great idea. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just whip up the slide here.
You are well prepared. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so let's talk about each of the handouts in case there are changes or things that people, again, we've got some great ideas already about some other things that maybe aren't covered by the handouts or that people are hoping to see. So the first three handouts, now these aren't the first three that show up in the presentation order, but I've just got them all on the same one here because you've seen all these three. So there are three handouts that we're providing that were already in our overview mail out, but it's just, again, to jog people's memory. They've maybe already thrown out their overview or had some questions at that time, but didn't have anyone to ask. So yeah, the incorporation process is one of our handouts. The services table that details all the services and who provides them and how that would change in an incorporation scenario. That's one of them. And again, the impacts graphic that we've talked about briefly already. So those are three of the handouts. Alan, if you can just go to the next slide, I think I have. And then this is our, yeah, this is the tax bill handout that I referred to earlier. So basically, this is just a list of all the services that we touched on when we went through our fact sheets, and just adds them all up in one place, as well as referring to the provincial and the other agencies and the other things that people would see on their taxes, even though those aren't part of the regional districts services. But yeah, presents all that information in one spot. And again, in our presentation, we will sort of break this down so people can understand what each part of this particular handout shows. And then Alan, if you can do the next handouts.
This one here, Sherry? Sure.
Yep.
So this handout on governance talks about how service decisions are made for the electoral area. So we look on there, we can see we introduce the board of governors, board of directors, and we look at how that's broken down into the electoral area directors and to the municipal directors, and how the numbers for each jurisdiction, particularly or in the case of the municipal directors, is based on population. We look then at the decisions for our DLS boards, and we look at the voting rules, how some are corporate votes, which would be our corporate unweighted votes, so 1 vote per director. Some are corporate weighted votes, and some are stakeholder votes, which are also weighted. And on the weighted voting, we see that kind of blown apart pie chart there on the right, which shows Area D in the context of the broader number of votes for the entire regional district. And it's particularly effective at showing just to kind of the relative voting strength of Area D compared to other jurisdictions and compared to the whole there for Area D. So this does kind of, again, look at the regional district decision-making process or model and the voting rules as it relates to the electoral Area D. And then, did you want me to look at this one as well, Sherry?
Sure.
Perfect. So one of the things which we have found very interesting and useful, building on experience in previous studies, both experiences where we tried this and experiences where we wished we had tried it, are the kind of the reasons why people may wish to be involved in an incorporation study area. And it's important because, as Sherry noted earlier when she was going through the agenda for the open house meetings, as she noted, when we look at boundaries, we have a strong kind of focus on the different technical factors, but we also have that community input, which is very important. And that's where we get into kind of what reasons people may resonate with people, why they may wish to be part of a study area, and why they may wish to not be part of a study area. And we note here on this page that we kind of talk about the purpose of an incorporation study. Then we talk about the study area being kind of key as the focus for that study, and the different reasons why people may want to be in, or they may prefer to stay outside of that area. And we've listed here reasons you might want to be in. And so some of the key reasons, I won't go through them all here, but some of the key reasons, you may want to be within an incorporation study area. And again, the study area just being the area that is going to be the focus of an exercise that will look at the impacts of incorporation. So you may want to be in that area if you want to understand the cost and the impact of having that local control over your services, having that control over land use planning, building inspection, and all those other kinds of important services. You may want to be in that area if you want to understand the cost and the impact of having the community, rather than Ministry of Transportation, set local road standards and provide road maintenance. And just going down the list there, we can see other ones. You may want to be in that study area if you want to learn more about the idea of being represented by more than one elected official. So, in having kind of that diversity of opinions on a council. You may want to be part of that if you're uncertain as to whether incorporation would make sense, but you're interested in gaining a better understanding and a fuller understanding of what the implications might be or would be related to incorporation for the area that is identified as a study area. You want to be part of that study area because you want to understand what incorporation would mean to you in terms of your local services, in terms of decision making, and in terms of property taxes. We then importantly, want to show reasons you might not want to be included, because again, the role of the committee is not to sway people one way or the other, but to provide the full menu and to help people understand that there are two legitimate options here. We may have different views individually on which one would be better for the area, but they're two legitimate options. And some people are going to really resonate with one and want to be part of that study area, and others may be less willing. And so you might not want to be part of that study area. You might just simply want to kind of say, this has been an interesting governance and boundary study, but we're ready to stop here. If you're content with the type and the level of current local services that are provided to your community. If you really value being part of more of a rural community with fewer service needs than other areas. If you're satisfied that service adjustments that you may need to, or you may wish to have in the future, or the current or the future, are minor and can be accommodated within the existing regional district system and within the unincorporated area form of governance. You may want to stay outside of the study area if you're happy with the idea of being represented by one electoral area director, and you're less happy or less concerned with the idea of having a council represent you, and you may be more concerned with the costs associated with that and so forth. And so we've listed then a number of reasons as to why you may want to be involved in a study area and why you may not want to be involved in a study area. And the answers to those, and kind of the sense that we'll get from folks as we go through that, and as we look then at the survey materials, they won't be definitive in the sense they won't be the only consideration. We'll also look importantly at the technical factors, but they will help to inform the options that are put together and the recommendation of the committee as it relates to boundary. Sherry. Oh, we don't hear you there.
Yep, got it. Thank you. So we're just also going to include, just as a reference, again, this will be provided in larger format for those who are there in person, as well as being provided as a handout for those who aren't. We just wanted to include a map, and this is essentially the OCP map. So this shows land uses, and I know it's obviously hard to see your little area wherever you're at, but I think providing a map of all of Area D shows that, I know we talked about this in previous meetings, but the idea that there's a ton of area in Area D that's sort of crown land and that vacant. So the populated area is really a very small portion of what is the larger Area D. And then the last handout that we had, and we had come up with some questions regarding services, governance, and then that boundary or incorporation impact and boundary considerations. And these were, the intention is that these would actually show up. This is part of our Q&A at the end of each section. And so we're just reiterating them here in a handout so that people have those questions in front of them if they're attending in person, and you don't have to wait until they show up on the screen, but maybe you're thinking about them before we even get to them, or that you're also a takeaway and you're still thinking about them afterwards. So we've just reiterated sort of questions that we were thinking of posing during the presentation and put them all on one sheet. So I want to pause and throw it back to you, Matt, before we talk about the feedback form, which is a little bit different than the handouts. But if people have questions, or if there's something missing or something they'd like to change in the handouts, maybe we could chat about that.
Okay. Any questions on the handouts that we've seen so far? Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to see if you were going to be referencing, because the material references City Hall and Municipal Hall, and yet many people may conjure a very big building versus the Warfield Municipal Hall or the Montrose or the Fruitvale, which are all just tiny little places and don't take up a lot of space. And I think some of them may even be rented. And I think it's important to put that kind of context into place when we reference the possibility of an additional expense of a municipal hall.
That's a very good point, because every word has the potential to be loaded here and to kind of give meanings which we may not intend. So and I'm just looking at the sheet, and I made the mistake of referring to City Hall, but on the sheet it's Municipal Hall, but maybe in City Hall, you're quite right. It gives an impression of quite an edifice, but Municipal Hall, Community Hall, that kind of thing. Maybe we can use language to more accurately reflect what the size would be. And each of those three halls that you mentioned, I've been in before, and they are pretty tiny. Yes.
Okay.
Just a
Yeah.
sec. Perhaps you could reference it as an office.
Yeah,
Municipal
sure. Yeah, municipal,
office.
yeah,
I
a
mean,
town
I'm
office
sitting
or,
here, I'm thinking of Fruitvales, and it feels an awful lot like an office. Yeah, there's a chamber room, but just, I
Yeah.
think the language is important.
I think that's a really strong point, Kay. You made it well. Thank you. I'm going to throw another one out. I'm just looking at this voting sheet here. How are service decisions made for Area D? And I really like I love this page. And I'm just wondering though, where you describe the 3 different decisions, if you can better define what the base is. So, our number is 1 vote in the first case. Maybe it's 3 votes in another case, but what's the total?
yeah.
So
No,
where
that's
you can
a
you
fair
show
point.
we
Yeah.
get 1 out of 19, or we get 3 out of
Yeah.
100, or whatever?
Yeah,
Okay?
that's a good point. That's,
Because
yeah.
1 voice is great, but if
Yeah.
there's way more, all right.
No, that's a very good point. We can do that for sure. We'll have to
Okay.
use an example on that third one where we have stakeholder votes or service votes, but we can, on the first 2, we could be definitive for sure.
Okay. I've got a question coming at us from the either Phyllis or Jim or Ron. Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. And just a thought that came to me in the last couple comments. I want to throw it out there as an idea. I don't know that it's a good idea, but we own the land property. We have a house there that could be repurposed to a proper functional hall and a building that could be used for some administration. So it's a thought that maybe in the future might be part of the consideration. We own it, it's there, it has plumbing. For a small cost of a renovation, probably a grant would be available easily. I could see that being a pretty interesting possibility.
Okay.
That's
Good
a
point.
good point. And in fact, when we look at West Kelowna, as Jim will know, their current city hall is still in a repurposed building that was owned by the community. Yes.
Okay, good point, Ron. Thanks. Any other comments or questions to these last chunk of handouts?
Phyllis here.
Okay, Phyllis?
I'm just thinking like I know we're going to talk about the questionnaire coming up, but these questions and the way it's laid out on this particular handout are really excellent. And I'm wondering if there is is there going to be an opportunity for people to they could maybe scribble an idea or 2 down right on that paper and just drop it in the box after that meeting is over, and also I just like these questions that are available, are they going to be available prior to the meetings? Because they're really good ways to get people thinking about this beforehand, rather than coming to the meeting and then like having everything there. They really could spark a lot of good thoughts, I think, beforehand.
So further to that, before I flip that to Alan or Sherry, I think some of these questions would lend themselves, and maybe you're already going in that direction, but would lend themselves to a poll, and it would just stimulate some discussion. Anyway, over to you two.
That's great. Thanks for those comments, Phyllis. Yeah, we will have them available on the website. So because the handouts will be there as well, so people could choose to download them or read them or look at them in advance if they wanted to, or yeah, they will get them obviously afterwards. And for sure, like, and we'll be talking about the feedback form in a minute, but during the open houses, we will also mention that, you know, they're certainly welcome to fill out the feedback form right there and leave it for us. But anything else or any other notes or comments that they want to jot down and leave for us as well, that's that. So yeah, if someone wanted to go down the side of that one that shows reasons for and against or something and leave us that's good too. So we'll take anything, because again, it's hard for us to reproduce in this setting the same sort of conversations that we normally would have had in a more informal open house, where we'd have a lot more sort of gathering and chances to chat with the committee members as well as with the consultants. And so yeah, any opportunities for them to leave their ideas behind, we'll totally welcome those.
Okay, thank you. Kay, you've got a question.
I'm wondering to tie it in together, because lots of times we don't know what we don't know, or we read something and we may not necessarily have the clarity we like. To be able to have those questions, almost like answer them before the meeting, and then beside that answer it after the meeting, and have it on the same form. So it's, you know, gives us an opportunity to see shifts, if that would be of interest.
Okay, it's an idea.
Yeah, that's really
Thanks, Kay.
intriguing. I know what you're getting at there, and it's yeah, leave that one with us if that's okay, because that, I mean, that would be really quite interesting to see some of the before and after. Yeah, let us just figure out how we might make that work and get back to you on that one. But that's kind of a very good idea.
It'll be a good measure of whether we're going to follow through on your final payment or not, Alan.
Yeah,
Whether you've really done
that's
the job or not.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, then we'll definitely have it.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we're back to you, Sherry and Alan. If there's anything else that you're going to present on here tonight, I think.
Yep. Great, thanks. Yeah, we just want to also touch on a couple other things. One is the feedback form. So we, I do have a formatted version now, which I just, I didn't want to spend too much time formatting it if we're going to change a bunch of the questions. And at the end of the day, this gets done by Civic Info and produced online. So yes, it won't quite look exactly how I've done it either, but we wanted to ask, normally in our open houses, we would have a feedback form, and what I've put together here is a few questions that some of the questions we would normally ask, but then some I've tried to sort of reiterate some of the information that we would be hoping to gather from people, because we, again, don't have that same opportunity to have the same conversations with people, particularly those online. So this is sort of a hybrid between almost like a bit of a survey as well as a regular feedback form. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any comments on things that they would like to see in here or things that they wouldn't. I mean, the shorter, generally we would like people who are at the meeting to fill out the feedback form while they're there and leave it before they leave. So I don't want it to be too long or seem too daunting. Like a 2-pager is sort of the maximum. So if there's anything in here we don't need to ask, I'm happy to remove it. But we do want to, yeah, get a sense of where people are at. And, you know, as Kay was talking about the idea of, you know, we could add a question that said, did you change your mind during the course of this event, or something along those lines? We could maybe try and capture some of those changes that way. But yeah, so I just want, yeah, I'm interested in feedback. Again, we don't want to make this longer. This is a form that people will get when they're in person. They'll get a paper copy. If they want to fill out that paper copy, that's fine. We will also mention the option that if people leave their email address from the sign up sheet, or if they want to go back as they're leaving and leave their email address, we can email them the link to fill it out online if they prefer. And all of those people who attend online, this form will pop up as soon as the meeting ends. So that will be their opportunity to fill out the same form. But yes, we'd like some feedback on the questions, or if there's anything else. Most of these questions are open-ended. Again, if we don't need to ask all of them, then that's great. Let's whittle it down. Or if you think there's something missing, then we want to hear that too.
Okay, any comments to this feedback form? Okay.
I'm wondering if it's an idea to specifically ask people if there is a service they don't currently receive, what services would they like to see that they don't currently receive? Because maybe everybody's satisfied, but there could be people, for instance, that would like a different way for the water, how they receive their water, or septic versus sewer, those kinds of things, and whether or not that would be of value.
Okay. Alan or Sherry?
I think that would be a value. Yes, I think we could infer certain things from that. So in some cases, it could simply be, well, that service is available under both, and and so maybe, but in other cases, it would be, we could infer slightly other things from that. So that might not be a bad question.
Okay, now I got Christy.
That actually would be an excellent question for purposes other than the study. I mean, I think it should help to inform the study, but I would love to get the feedback on that question from the citizens. So if we can include it, I'd love that.
Okay, good stuff.
Yep, that sounds good. We'll get that in there. Thank you for that.
Okay, do I have any other comments or input? David, were you?
I was
wanted
just
to ask
wondering
something?
what area you would put Bighorn Estates in and Pete's Cliff.
Alan, did you get that? What area would you consider Bighorn and Peachcliff?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm going to see if Sherry can help us there.
And just, I would have to, I don't know that I know exactly where those communities are relative to, if I'm remembering correctly, are they southeast of?
Just up McLean Creek Road.
Okay, yeah. So I think I sort of have maps of where Okanagan Falls is, and then everything south there. So I mean, I don't know. You guys tell me, you know the community better. Is that something that you think of as part of Okanagan Falls? Like we have the boundary that we're showing when we're creating the maps right now. Yeah, I'd have to call up the map.
If I can answer, I would consider it part of OK Falls. You can walk from the beach to those two communities. Bighorn is overlooking OK Falls. Peach Cliff is a lovely community. You can walk to the gas station. So it's not like Basalt Lake. It's not like Upper Carmi. It's not like Heritage Hills. It's not like Skaha Estates. It's not, although McLean Creek Road starts on the edge of what you could call the edge of the OK Falls village. It is the edge that's in the village, and it then continues up to McLean Creek and around and joins back to East Side Road. So, let me answer it this way. It's not part of Upper Carmi. It's not part of Basalt Lake. It's not part of Heritage Hills. It's not part of, so what's left? Well, OK Falls.
So maybe,
Yeah,
so
and-
maybe somebody would answer that then by if they either put in OK Falls, south of OK Falls, or maybe I just identified it under other.
Yeah, on
would that-
the feedback
go-
form, yeah, that they have that option if they don't feel like they're represented in any of the other communities, but we will also have sort of maps at those. But if you're wondering which meeting they should attend, that's sort of an interesting question. I mean, obviously, wherever they identify with, they'd be welcome to attend, and they're welcome to attend any of the focus groups, of course. But I do have a map, so I'm just not sure I know exactly which properties are those, but I can share all 5 maps of all of the focus areas will be also provided online. So if people are wondering, they can open those maps and see which one that they would be on.
Okay. I've got first Bob and then Kay.
Yeah, Sherry, perhaps Okanagan Falls, including Bighorn Estates and Peach Cliff Estates, something like that. As you did down below with south of Okanagan Falls, Sun Valley, Rolling Hills. But I'm also wondering, what about beyond Peach Cliff Estates, McLean Creek Road, that all the rural property that runs up that way and along the bench, and then back down, eventually rejoining East Side Road. Is that sort of surrounding areas? I'm really not sure how to include them.
Okay.
Well, that's East
Are we worried about including them like on the feedback form so they can, because they don't identify with one of these communities, or are we worried about including them that they don't feel a part of one of the focus areas? Or both?
Both, I think.
Okay, because I think we've sort of said surrounding area for each of the, but I know that we can make sure that we do in the feedback form as well. But in the feedback form, obviously we provide an option for them to identify as none of those and write down what they would identify with. But and then I guess in the focus areas, yeah, through the maps, they can actually figure out which focus area that they would be in. But we say surrounding communities, I think, with the idea that, hey, if someone in Sun Valley thinks that they're part of OK Falls, they can go to the OK Falls one too. We also don't want to rule out and fit people into a bubble if they have shared interests or they feel that they're part of a different community. David has his hand up too.
Oh, I'm just curious.
Well.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure which David, pardon me. You could just change it. Where in the community do you live or identify with? And then leave it to the individuals to say, I think I'm Okanagan Falls, or put in other where they live. Another possibility. Since one of the considerations in the why you might or might not want to incorporate is talking about what do you feel associated with that community. So I could kind of link those two together.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of ideas there. Have I got any other questions? I think I saw Kay Midland. Were you asking a question again? No? Okay. Anyone else?
If I
looks
can
like,
add a
okay,
comment.
Ron, go ahead.
I spoke about this many meetings ago, but I'm going to repeat it. I fear people feeling left out or offended. And so I lean to what I see in some of the documents, but the idea that everybody's welcome all the time, and to really emphasize that everybody's always welcome, because if you feel like you're not welcome, I think there's a risk of offending a few, and I can think of a dozen examples. We have a few properties north of the Trestle Bridge. What about those? I can think of many examples where you have a bordering community from the Rolling Hills versus Vassal Lake versus the Peachcliff Estate area. I mean, we're talking very subtle distinctions between those boundaries. And I'll tell you, you may not feel like you're in any of those areas because you live on a place that's in between Peachcliff Estates and Rolling Hills. What do you call those people? So I think it's really, and McLean Creek Road, really an important area that gets overlooked regularly, including not having good internet. So these little details, these nuances, I would just caution wherever possible to focus on everybody being welcome. And I know that the purpose of those 5 communities that were identified is they're pretty identifiable communities, but it's really those people who are not smack in the middle of those communities that we're talking about. And McLean Creek Roads are a real great example, but there's many. So that's for what it's worth. I would just be real careful to make sure we welcome everybody.
Yep, I think that's certainly the intent, Ron. Point taken. Okay, Sherry and Alan, I think we're back to you for your next, I think it's your last set. Go ahead.
Thank you. I did just want to provide, and I know I didn't reference this exactly, I did refer the schedule, but part of that is sort of our next, after the open houses, we are planning for the panel discussion. So just wanted to give you an update on that. We do have the mayor of West Kelowna and the mayor of Clearwater that have agreed to participate in that. The mayor of Barriere is going to be away then, so we're actually working on maybe trying to get the CAO to attend in his place. And we did just have a panel discussion in the CSRD, so we had these 3 mayors attend that event as well, and it went really well. It was very interesting to hear all of their comments, but so yeah, we do have them committed and we are working on that as well. What we were hoping to do is have different committee members provide an introduction to each one of the panelists. So maybe over the next next week or so, maybe if I don't know if I have particular volunteers, if anyone wants to volunteer for that at the same time as you're maybe scheduling whether which open houses you're going to be at. Yeah, we'd like to have you do a little research and maybe introduce them as part of the panel. And yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that when we do have the panel discussion, we will be taking questions from those who are attending, so residents that are attending, but we also welcome questions from the committee. So maybe start to think about that as well, because yeah, you guys you're in the middle of it, and so your questions are equally as valid, and we'll try and get to all of them during that event. Alan, did you have any other updates on the panel based on Alan was our host for the one that we just held? And any lessons learned that we need to remind people of?
And maybe just in terms of the individuals whom we have confirmed, I think we might have just missed out one. We've got Doug Finlater from West Kelowna. So he actually was the mayor and he was the chair of the incorporation study committee, but he's now a councillor in West Kelowna.
Right.
He's confirmed. We've also got the mayor of Clearwater, who was confirmed. So that's Merlin Blackwell. And then we've got did you mention Mayor Blackwell, Sherry? Maybe I missed that. Okay, I beg your pardon then. Yeah, and then yes, and as you mentioned, then Mayor Stamer from Barriere unfortunately can't attend. Director Paul Deminock from CSRD has agreed to attend as well. He's gone through the of course the big study and now that we're coming to the end of in the CSRD, so he's got some good perspectives. We could, and maybe this is a question for the committee. I have spoken with the CAO in Barriere, and he was there for the incorporation of the municipality, I believe. I have spoken to him in the past as well about their experience. He would give a slightly different perspective as an appointed official versus an elected official, but it would be perhaps no less valid. And so I know that he would be willing to attend as well if we think that would be helpful. So maybe throw that out to the committee. But we did, to Sherry's point, it was our panelists were very gracious in providing their time. They're excited to come down to, so providing their time with the CSRD, they're excited to come down to Okanagan Falls, or well, figuratively come down online to Okanagan Falls and spend a few hours with folks at the discussion panel there. So it should be an interesting and informative event. So maybe Matt, just the question then with respect to the gentleman from Barriere, if you think it would be important or helpful to invite him as well.
Okay. Before I get there, I'm going to ask Bob your question.
I do. I mean, one of the things we're tasked with as a committee is to gather and present information in an unbiased manner. Respectful of people on both sides of the issue, or right smack dab in the middle. And just from your experience, are these mayors able to do that? Or is it a case where it might be more appropriate if we're in the middle of a full-scale incorporation study?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they'll certainly have, and we witnessed this at our last or this panel that we had a few weeks back in Shuswap. They have very clear ideas on what they think was beneficial for their community. They have Councillor Finlater from West Kelowna was particularly interesting because he was able to kind of talk about his early perspective and about and then how it kind of favored one approach and then how it changed over the course of learning some things. We will get they will, I suspect, be more kind of pro moving towards some kind of incorporation just because they've been down that path, and so they've kind of looked at the benefits and the disadvantages. So I suspect that they would be more along the line of, we think that in our community's cases, at least, it was beneficial to move further into an incorporation study because it allowed us to find certain things. We're not going to find a lot of people who are going to be able to come and talk about why they decided not to, because they're just kind of not out there so much. But I think that it's a really good question. It certainly fits well in an incorporation study. That said, we did find when we did the governance study in the Shuswap a couple of years back, we did have a similar discussion panel where we had some mayors come and some elected electoral area directors come, and they did provide. They faced some difficult questions from committee members, from the public, and they did provide kind of good pros and cons and good food for thought for people. So, it may be how we moderate. It may be the questions we ask. It may be kind of really prodding and trying to get a sense as to the benefits of proceeding into another study or the benefits of staying unincorporated.
Okay.
Just Matt, a follow-up comment. My biggest fear is that this process is perceived as a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to see anybody feel that way, and to give any manners that it is, because it shouldn't be, and it's not, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question to raise.
Okay. I've got two more questions here. So first, Ron, and Ron, I have people after you as well, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Alan, just thank you so much. I can add to the conversation. I have met with and spoken with Doug Finlater, Vernon Blackwell, Paul Debenham. They all bring tremendous value of knowledge, could answer questions. I think, Bob, they bring value that is so important, and the benefit would be spectacular. I've spoken to them all. I've met, well, I haven't met Doug in person, but I've met him on the phone. I want to add that the idea of the CAO barrier, I think, is a great idea. I don't know him. I don't know the mayor of Barrier, haven't talked to them. Barrier's a small community. I think they would offer a phenomenal benefit. Even the CAO would bring benefit. And my third point, my last point, we have the benefit of, I know most of you know Jim Zaffino, and Jim is unique in his experience, what he knows, but he was the first finance manager and second CAO in the newly incorporated West Kelowna. And I think he brings real benefit in a panel situation. You know, I think that we have to remember we have some resources within our own organization that can be very valuable to a public meeting, people who have questions. I think the process, the purpose is to provide information. And I think that I'm just delighted to hear the update on who is participating on the panels. I think it's well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. So, you know, another suggestion there. Eleanor has suggested that we consider the mayor of Karamias. I think from a couple of perspectives that I can see, it's very nearby. It's in the same region, and it's you know, comparable, relatively small size community. So Eleanor, you might have points to add to that.
May I just make a point? I just saw Eleanor nod her head that she's okay.
Yeah.
I think so. So I don't want to, I don't hope I'm not interrupting, but Bob is and thank you, Ron, for those points as well. I think I concur that, yeah, I do believe that those folks will bring some very interesting perspectives and more importantly, some good information to allow people to, you know, really think about what's important to them. One of the things which getting back to Bob's concern, which is a very valid concern, and we don't want to emerge from any discussion panel with people thinking that it was kind of a setup or something like that, or it was too biased one way or the other. I think that one of the points, well, a couple of points. One, I think that through proper moderation and through proper questions, I think we can kind of make sure to really prod the different perspectives that even individuals will have about timing and when it was right for them and when it wasn't right for them. And on that note, and another point then is when we look at West Kelowna, when we look at Barrier, when we look at pretty much all these places that have ultimately determined to incorporate, none of them did it on the first attempt. And so I think that we may hear from the Doug Finlaters of the world kind of, you know, at a certain point, it made sense for them to go further and to look at incorporation. But prior to that, it didn't. And so, you know, for them, that there were certain characteristics of the community and certain conditions in place that constituted that tipping point. And for Okanagan Falls, maybe that's completely different. But the fact is that there'll be different ideas and different thoughts that people will want to be considering as they make that decision as communities as to whether they want to proceed further down that study path. So even though we may now be drawing from a pool of people that have gone through incorporation, we may find that some of the perspectives are quite balanced, in fact, about the pros and the cons of the two options. I know, by the way, we'll hear that from Paul Demonock as well from the CSRD with the electoral area director. I think that he and I spoke today, and we were talking about this very point and just how he will, you know, his perspective is that there's a right time for an electoral area to be considering this in his case, and in the South Shuswap, there was a time when it wasn't the right time, and so I think that we can infer some of those things, and people will be able to apply those findings, those observations that are provided to the Okanagan Falls and Area D situation.
Okay. I just want to throw out, and I think this is going back to Bob's point, and also the balance between both elected and appointed representation. They both bring good information to the table. I think it would be important to either, well, my preference would be to see someone with some CAO experience at the table. I just think they really know the technical side of it, and just bring a slightly different flavor. And I think that also gets to Bob's point of making sure we provide balance here. So in that regard, one name, and you already know him, I think, what's his name? John Smith up in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, John is the current chair of the Incorporation Study Committee in South Shuswap.
Yeah.
And then the gentleman from Barriere, Bob, I can't remember his last name, but he is, he's the other individual.
Yeah.
And
Well, all I was getting at with John is, I mean, he's a retired CAO, if I'm
for
not
the regional
mistaken.
district, for sure.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you'll have no shortage of people, but just let's try to encourage that balanced viewpoint. David Van Omen.
Thanks. So just a few comments. In Barriere, Bob Payette is the CAO, and he started working there in 2020. Colleen Hannigan, who was the CAO from 2010, I think it was, until 2020, is still working at Barriere. So they were incorporated in 2007. I was trying to find who the initial CAO was, and I can't find it yet. So I'll try and get that to Sherry and Alan if they want someone else besides Bob, unless Bob was there and came back. But I tried to find that; it didn't seem like it. Saying that, Bob Payette has years of experience as a CAO, so he's still someone good to draw on. And then to this committee's Bob reference about having a balance of people on the panel. Recently, in the past 15 years, there haven't been too many incorporation studies, and so the ones that were most recent, Sun Peaks, but was also a successful incorporation, and the only one that hasn't been a successful incorporation was Salt Spring Island, and that was not successful for a myriad of reasons, and also Salt Spring Island being quite unique in terms of the composition and everything else may not be the best example to bring to a panel for Okanagan Falls. So that may be why there seems to be more pro than con.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob.
I got Bob on the rebuttal.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Listen, I just wanted to say that I'm very comfortable with Alan's comments about the nature of questioning and that kind of thing, and that was it. I just wanted to raise my concerns that that if mayors are invited, that they do present a balanced perspective. Nobody more than me wants to see the question go right to the referendum, through a full-scale study, and I just want as many people in the community to keep going along with that too. So,
absolutely.
But thanks, Alan. I'm very comfortable with what you said.
Okay. I'm just wondering, do we see any other questions? I don't.
We have Phyllis here.
Okay, Phyllis.
So I think it's excellent that we're going to get all this information from other areas that have gone through the process and have this experience. And I know when we're talking about different people bringing their knowledge to the table, but I'm just wondering, it seems to me that whenever I go to any kind of RDOS function, one of the first things that is mentioned is that we're sitting on the ceded land of such and such territory and recognizing our Aboriginal partners. And, I haven't seen any mention of any kind of communication or with any of the Aboriginal groups. And it may not be the time, but generally sooner rather than later is a good time to start. If there's going to be a incorporation study, shouldn't we be looking at that aspect as well? Because it hasn't come up at all.
That's a $64 question. David, I know you and I've discussed this offline. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so just in terms of the provincial side, there's it's a bit of a loaded question in terms of when the provincial duty to consult is triggered, which would be if this actually goes to an incorporation study. But at this stage, hopefully, as soon as it gets reviewed by legal within the next week, there will be a notification letter going out from the province to the identified First Nations in the area of Area D, informing them, if they haven't already known, about the study that's going on, plus all of the community engagement that's going on, just to basically raise their awareness of it. And if they have any initial questions or concerns or whatnot, they can start to approach the province with those in anticipation of something going forward. At least they know now. So it's a really good question. And yeah, it's being worked on. From the provincial perspective, if the RDOS and the committee wants to do something independent, I wholly encourage that.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's, been a lot of work done to build a relationship, and it would be to just sort of throw that away, I don't think we can do that and be successful. It needs to be noted.
Okay.
Are we, but just if I may, Matt, just for my own clarification, are we talking about First Nation representation on a discussion panel or more generally First Nation consultation as part of the study?
I took it as more.
Yeah, I think the bigger picture, but really, it would be great to have somebody on the table. So we don't have a very diverse group, unfortunately.
I'm going to ask us to think about that one. Because I can definitely see, the province is already reaching out. RDOS has relationships with the First Nations as well. And for us to, I would just like to tread cautiously before we just say, hey, come on to the party. Because I'm not quite sure what the reaction will be.
Yeah, I just think that we definitely need to
Dialogue.
see that as being open.
Yeah, initiate dialogue, I definitely agree with. And I have that down as a note. Okay. All right. Good point.
I think we have Christy with her hand up there, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Christy, I missed you.
That's okay. No, just to shed some light on that, just so the committee knows, we did, at the beginning of this project, we did notify the 4 Indigenous communities that this project was underway, and we invited them to sit at the committee, and we do keep them in touch in various ways, primarily through staff to staff, but they will be receiving a report shortly, much like our board will, on the progress of this to date. So, rest assured there is communication going on there, but we could certainly, enhance that and open the door again, but I think that's a bigger discussion to have first.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anything else, or shall we move on to the next agenda item? Work plan, remaining work plan.
Yes, so I just wanted to touch on a schedule update, and this actually touches on, I think Mylene had a question in the chat here as well. She was wondering what the date was for the panel discussion. So yes, our date for the panel discussion is actually March 5th. So that's the Saturday following our last open house meeting. So March 5th is the date that we have set aside for the panel discussion. So yes, that will be advertised through Skaha Matters for the March version. We will also be bringing it up and referencing it during our open house meetings, so people are aware of it there. The question that Mylene had, she also was wondering if this will also be a hybrid meeting. So all our panelists will be attending online. So the majority of the event will be online. We haven't booked a room for it at this point, but we could have a room where people come and watch and or participate in the meeting. Like we could use sort of the Okanagan Falls and use the smart board as a way for people who either don't like attending via their own personal Zoom, and they could all meet somewhere almost like a viewing party if we want to do that. But yeah, it will be sort of the discussion will be facilitated online, and all our panelists will be attending online. So yeah, so again, if we want to book a viewing party to sort of have that people being able to come together and either watch and or participate, we can do that, but we haven't booked a room at this point, but we can if that's what the committee would like to do. I did just want to provide update. So a schedule, we've sort of looked ahead to the rest of the work plan and getting everything done. And we've sort of got two options. One just stays with our current meeting schedule. But if we stay with our current meeting schedule based on sort of when we can get the survey out and when those results will come in from the survey and getting the draft report to the committee to review, we won't end up making our end of May deadline, which was in our proposal to begin with. So if we want to make that end of May, if that's crucial that we want to make that end of May deadline, then we will need to schedule an additional meeting a little earlier to go through the boundary options and survey earlier, so somewhere around March 30th. Or if we're fine just staying with our current meeting schedule, then the final report will be submitted sort of mid-June. But I just wanted to present those two options.
Okay, and before we get into the discussion of that, can I just verify with Christy and or David that both of these options work as far as you're concerned?
So from the RDOS perspective, if the committee submits a draft report by June 8th, or a final report submitted to the regional district, it has to go to the board with an administrative response. And I see that happening more towards the end of June, early July. When we set our original timelines, and David, I think you can confirm this, we knew it was really ambitious and we knew that we may not make those exact timelines. So I do believe we have the luxury of a little more time and aim more for hitting our board of directors meeting end of June, early July.
Okay, so both options would work as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, these two options look to work to get the report into the regional district.
Yeah.
But in all likelihood, it's going to be discussed at the regional district end of June, early July.
Yeah, okay, so we can strive mightily and achieve by May 31st. It's not going to get there any sooner. Okay, all right, good. Can I just go to David?
Yeah, there's no concerns on the province side when it comes to timelines. We're certainly flexible.
Okay, all right. So now then over to the committee, I guess. We've got two options. Both of them are perfectly acceptable to our funders. Any comments? One thing I will say, we've got our open houses and then a panel discussion. So we've got a bunch of, there's going to be a bunch of data and feedback from that the consultants are going to have to wrap their heads around. So just help me here, Alan and Sherry. I don't think on March the 9th that you're going to present, this is what we heard. I think on March the 9th, it's more a question of us as committee members talking amongst ourselves and talking to the consultants about what we as committee members heard at those open houses as further input to the consultants. Is that correct?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes, we won't have, with that being so close to when our open houses were, and yeah, we won't have our sort of summary of feedback or anything prepared at that point. So yes.
Okay. So to be clear then, March 9th is going to be a very much open discussion. I think we'll still look to you to give us some kind of a structure to work with to get our comments. But that's going to be our chance to talk about what we heard.
Correct.
And then I guess we're looking at either, do we wait a month till April the 13th, or do we hear back from the consultants at the end of the month, March 30th?
And maybe just
Okay, Kay?
from the consultant's perspective, just to fill the silence here, if we got a vote, it would be wait till April 13th. But anyway, on that note.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's great to hear. That's very helpful. Okay.
That's what I was going to say, that it just seemed to be, option 2 was more rushed. And if we have the okay of the regional district and the province to have flexible timelines, then the current meeting schedule to me makes the most sense.
Great. Any other comments or questions on that part of it? I mean, it's the same stuff happening. It's just whether we go at express pace or not. And there's really no need to go with express. So I'm just going to say, I think we're okay going with the current meeting schedule.
Would you like a motion to that effect?
Okay, sure. I'll
Okay,
take a
so
motion
moved.
from Bob for sure.
So move.
Okay, motion that we stick with the current meeting schedule. Can I have a seconder? David Forst. Okay, so we got a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? So really we're looking at going with the option on the left. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye, and I'm going to ask you to say aye. Say aye. Oh God,
Aye.
everybody's on mic. Jesus.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Okay. All right. Are there any opposed? Okay, I've got Mylene in favor and I've got Kurt in favor. And yeah. Okay, that one's carried. So we've got a new meeting schedule. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer for the final report. That's fine. It's going to be well cooked to perfection. Okay, where are we at now? I think the last item we need to discuss, and we're running out of time here, but just we need to promote these open houses. So we've already put out a communique to each of you, asked you to pick up some, or we've sort of designated some people in each area and asked you to pick up some posters. They are pretty good posters. If you want an extra large one, we can give you one, but it's literally, 2 feet by 3 feet. So it is a large poster. But if we can get those up, that would be great. I've had volunteers already step forward, so thank you. I've also talked with Lock Property Management at the OK Corral and a few other local places in town to see if we can get it put up on their signboards. If anybody's got any awareness of a signboard, in their community, make the inquiry on your own and get the signage up there, or give me a call and we'll see if we can get it put up. If there's any suggestions in terms of how we get to media, I think, Christy, you've already put this to Castanet and all those types, have you?
Yes, so we have an info release ready to go here to start to promote those. We're just waiting for a WebEx link so that we can issue that. We're also going to post it on the website, put it to social media, various ways of doing that, Twitter, Facebook. And we're going to use our Voyant alert system for non-emergency to notify people as well. So anybody who signed up in Area D to Voyant Alert will receive a notification.
awesome.
Yeah. If ever you know of anybody who isn't signed up and you think they might be, send them my way and I'm happy to help them.
Okay, that's good. So all of that is to say, although you haven't maybe seen or heard too much of this so far, I think within the next day or two, you're going to start to see or hear something. And if you can post to your relevant Facebook's sites, that little poster, you know, it's on the RDOS Connections website. If you want a copy of it, you can email me or email Christy. We'll get you a copy of it. And if you can post it to your Facebook sites, Facebook pages, that would be helpful as well. David, you got a question?
I was wondering about posting it to the Nextdoor app, which a lot of people in this area use.
Never heard of the animal,
Well, it's
but
very
go for it. You got
it
my
is-
permission.
Okay, because it is heavily used here for
Great.
community events in
Yeah,
Heritage and in Scotland.
that's awesome. Yeah. Okay. I think we're done the work part of the session. Alan, Sherry, Christy, David. Yeah. Okay. We have one representative from the community, Judy Garner. Judy, the stage is yours. If you've got a question, now's the time to ask it. You're on the agenda. You are an agenda item.
I do have a question now. I thought the boundary study would be to provide a recommendation on what the boundary should be on a potential new municipal entity. If that's received favorably, it progresses through an incorporation study and referendum and perhaps a new entity. So my question is twofold. Is it possible for the boundary to change during the incorporation study? And secondly, once the municipality, whether it's a town or a municipality, is up and running, is it possible for the boundary to change? So I guess I'm asking is how etched in stone is the boundary going to be based on the recommendation on June 22nd?
Okay, let's go first to Alan, and then I think we'll go to David.
Sure. Good questions. So when the boundary is recommended, the boundary we go through the assessment, we look at the technical factors, we look at the community feedback, and we put together a recommended boundary that the committee will consider. And then once the committee has a sense of that, it'll make a recommendation. Once that, and then that goes then to the CSRD, or I beg your pardon, the RDOS board, and then from there to the province. Once the province accepts that, it does become the boundary for the study. Now, we go into the study on the assumption that the boundary is set, and we're going to begin the analysis, and it's not going to change. That said, we have found in a number of cases, and we found this certainly in our case up in this South Shuswap, that some people, as we go through an incorporation study, will have some concerns about being either included in the study area or excluded from the study area, depending on whatever their particular location is. And the province in the CSRD case, in the South Shuswap case, allowed people to make a presentation to the committee in very limited number of cases where properties were contiguous to the boundary and where an argument could be made to kind of either include them or exclude them. And in two cases, the province agreed, based on the committee's recommendation after reviewing and hearing these appeals, the province agreed to change the boundary slightly. So it's not etched in stone, but there is a high bar to be met to make changes after the study has begun. And then the next question then is, well, what happens if there is a new municipality created And so we have incorporation. Post incorporation, can the boundary change? And the answer is yes. And I think David might have addressed this at our previous meeting, but yes, the answer is yes. You can change it in small ways through an administrative process. If there are only a few properties with kind of certain characteristics that don't constitute a large portion of the municipality. And again, those can kind of come in or come out again based on an administrative process that the province undertakes. And you can also, although this wouldn't be entertained, I think, for some time, but you could then undertake an amalgamation study or that kind of thing down the road if you wanted to change the study. But I think the question was more about small changes post incorporation. And yes, those can be done as they can in any municipality throughout the province. Anything that I missed there, David?
No, that was great. I think the only thing I would add is where I work in the governance and structure branch, boundary amendments, usually boundary extensions to municipalities, is very common. It happens all the time. It's a natural growth of a municipality. And in some cases, there's also boundary reductions, which tends to happen in smaller municipalities for those folks that either want to remove themselves from a municipality, but there has to be a very good reason for that. The one other thing that is the same-ish as the incorporation process is when new properties want to enter into municipality, there is a vote in the municipality to accept those new properties coming in, because there could be tax variations depending on the number of properties coming in and what kind of properties they are. But yeah, it happens very, very often after post incorporation, those changes to boundaries.
Thanks,
Hey,
Alan.
Judy?
I do have one other question, sorry. Alan, at the last meeting, I think it was probably Sherry, presented the committee with a listing of 11 criteria. It was a really comprehensive and good listing. Do you recall that?
I do, yes. I know the one you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so my question is, it involved a lot of data collection. For example, one of them was current demographics in each of these 5 areas and then projected demographics. But there was a lot of data going to be needed to be collected in this listing of criteria.
Yeah.
And has that started?
Yes, it has. Indeed. Yeah. So we've started that kind of in the background. And so we'll be bringing all of that forward to the committee after we've had the open houses and we get more into kind of the technical side of the boundary.
Okay, that was my question, because I couldn't figure out how you were going to get it done if you started it.
Sherry's pretty efficient, but yeah, it's a.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also thinking there's going to be some, we can have data to the nth degree, but I think there's going to be some big factors that help us decide where we want to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Any other questions, comments? Open mic for about 1 minute here. No, good. All right. If I can get back, I think that we are, I'll just confirm our next meeting would then be March 9th, except that we have a slew of open houses between now and then. So stand by, because you will also get a questionnaire asking you to sign up in 2 or 3 spots for each of these 5 meetings. Okay. And I haven't quite figured out how we're going to do that yet, but stay tuned. And that'll have a fairly short turnaround, because I think we'll probably get it to you maybe tomorrow and ask you to respond on Friday rather, just so we can get it together. Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 12 minutes after the hour. Made by Kay. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by David. All those in favor? We'll go with that. Okay, thank you very much.